Krugman is right, but who cares? Why don't we look at some important policy issues, like the differences in healthcare policy, the differences in foreign policy, the differences on climate change. When you break the banks up, what happens is they get captured. Regulation does not work. We tried, and it failed. So, personally, you give me a referendum on a bank and I stay home. It's boring, and it has no effect at all on my life. I do not think that is what is driving the popularity of Sanders' campaign, and I think he needs to fight the perception that it is. Because once people understand him as the bank candidate, then he becomes the next Ron Paul. It's a way to marginalize him, and throw him away, and forget he exists. So we need less Teddy Roosevelt here and more Franklin Roosevelt. The banks are important for one reason, and one reason only, and that's because it's where he gets the money to do the things that he wants to do. And that's all. That is all, as Mr. Wilde would say. The way to fix the financial system is to educate people about where they're putting their money. It doesn't matter if it's big or small, or private or public, or anything else. So long as people remain clueless, they will be taken advantage of. You can't protect the ignorant. What we need is greater financial literacy. So Krugman is saying, the size of the banks wasn't really important. Whether it's too big to fail or not doesn't these are just facile media, sound bites. This is not serious policy. And Krugman's right. Krugman is usually right. Even when he's wrong, he's right. And I mean, I will offer the same criticism at Elizabeth Warren. And these are not ideas that are or should be attached to progressive political movements or to the left either. If you listen to what Elizabeth Warren says about the banks, like her solution to all of this unregulated capitalism is just regulated capitalism. It's not a radical systemic solution. It's market theory. And it's the same thing with Sanders. The reality is that market theory is not a theory that has a very good track record. You can throw it away one way or the other. You can throw it away from the left, which is what I would tend to prefer to do, or you can throw it away from the right, which is what the establishment does. But it's not something that has very... I mean, for all its propaganda value, it doesn't work. And it's been demonstrated that it doesn't work. It has no academic support, really, anywhere. When you take a course in economics, the first thing they do is they tell you that this theory is a naive idealization for a reality that doesn't exist. And they're right? So, this idea that if you break the banks up, if you make them smaller, then it'll be better for consumers, that's not an idea that has really any serious academic support. It's a populist idea, and frankly, it's a right-wing populist idea. It's an idea that you would associate with the Ron Pauls of the world. This has never been confusing to me. I've understood this from the start, okay? But that's not... I mean, the whole banking thing, I would be happier if Bernie Sanders would just stop talking about the banks. Because every time he talks about the banks, I cringe. And it makes me a little bit uneasy about supporting him. The reason I would support Bernie Sanders has really absolutely nothing to do with his bank policy. It It has to do with things like his healthcare policy and his foreign policy and his climate change policy. And I'm kind of just willing to, amuse the whole banking thing, and to sort of realize that it's a pragmatic necessity to win votes, kind of thing, right? And you can kind of humor him in the process. But I really don't support any of these bank policies, and frankly, I don't think that he has any real serious possibility of carrying through with any of them, anyways, right? So this is just this is his own demagoguery. I mean, he is refreshing in a lot of ways, but at the end of the day, he is still a politician. He's not particularly left wing, and all of these. This is one of his more right wing tendencies that I don't like, and I'm not going to pretend that I do. So it's really an example of. I mean, Krugman's a very educated person, and a lot of the people that are trying to argue with Krugman are not as educated as he is, and especially are not as educated as he is on the topic of economics. And the arguments that I've seen are embarrassing for the people that are making them. And sometimes Sanders is himself embarrassing. And really, in a large he's largely embarrassing himself, right? But again, I don't care. I'm not going to vote for him or not vote for him based on his monetary policy or his banking policy. Okay? This is really of little concern to me. Okay? I'm interested in his other policies, right? So, what this is a way to marginalize him. For as long as this goes on, it's probably not going to go on very much longer. The votes on the 19th. But for however much longer that it goes on for, I think that you should expect the Clinton campaign to keep hitting him on this, okay? Because if you are educated on the topic, you know that he's not right. And it doesn't make him sound very good on the topic, okay? It's a lot of really badly debunked market theory, okay? What I would like to hear him say is to rip apart the market theory from the left, which is outside the spectrum. Okay, you can rip apart the market theory from the right. Okay, while paying lip service to it. Okay, but you can't really. You don't hear it in the spectrum anymore. This realist-based idea that okay, if you put a lot of regulation in place, what happens is the regulators get bought out by the companies that they're supposed to be regulating, and what you do is you're putting in place a system. You're systemizing corruption, right? And so these regulatory bodies, the term is captured. They get captured by the industry that they're trying to regulate. Okay, this is well established. Okay. It's demonstrable, it's predictable, and it's I require no great foresight to say that if he sets up this regulatory system, or if he starts trying to break them up, or all these kinds of things, what's going to happen is that it's just going to open up a wider door for industry to come into government. And all of these things that he's setting up, that he claims are designed to regulate the banks and break them down and make them smaller, are actually just going to make them bigger. Okay? I do not require any great foresight to see that, because it's what's happened in the past. Not just with the banks, but with the environmental agencies, with the defense departments, on sort of concern after concern, right? So I mean, this isn't just rhetoric, right? Krugman has a lot of data, a lot of evidence behind what he's saying, and the reality is that Sanders is really just embarrassing himself on this particular issue. But you should not let that really bother you. It's pretty clear that all of the rhetoric that Sanders is using is really just designed to work people up. He's from a small state with a lower education level, so and a lot of the people that he needs to convince to vote for him are of this sort of right-wing populist bent. That area may lean Democrat, but it's not on any particular liberal basis. It's a class thing, right? And so he's got to do a spiel, and he's fighting the banks, and like I say, it's a bunch of demagoguery, and it's a bunch of nonsense, and he's not right, but it doesn't matter because he's still got the best healthcare plan, he's still got the best foreign policy, and he's still got the best climate change plan, and those are actual important issues that are going to make an effect on your life, on people's lives, and should actually have some effect on your voting decisions. Okay, and on top of that, I think that when discussing this, perhaps my lesser opposition to Trump might be a little bit more clear, because he's got the better, he's got the better trade policies, etc. Right? Despite the fact that I don't agree with him on all these other things, he does. I prefer Trump's foreign policy as well. Right? So, the point being that instead of trying to push back on this point, I think that the Sanders supporters should acknowledge it, and not embarrass themselves in trying to argue against your Krugmans, or your Stieglitzes, or whoever else it is that's coming out and saying, listen, his arguments are broadly ignorant of the actual way that government and finance interact with each other, what it is that we understand about how regulatory systems work, what it is that we understand about what markets are. I don't even want to say about how markets work, because there's really no such thing as markets, and et cetera, right? Maybe it should come to no surprise to you that the Nobel laureate kind of knows what he's talking about. So that's that, and don't let it get to you, kind of thing.